Welcome into the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. Special guest today, my favorite Man City fan in the world, but he's more known for everything he does at Dime on Upright. He's an editor, writes over there, tons of great stuff. Bill DiFilippo. Bill, what's up, buddy?
Not much, guys. Just happy to be on here, talk a little bit of basketball before things. You know, we're doing this on June 27th at about 5:40 p.m. and things have already been like a little weird. So I'm excited to do this before things get really crazy because I think you guys probably agree with me. Like the likelihood of this podcast ending, this recording ending, and then something happening that makes something completely irrelevant in here this time of year is just like remarkably high.
Bill, can you if you're comfortable, can you peel back and tell people where you are going to be when free agency opens at 6 p.m. on Friday?
Yeah, give me a second.
We got props. I love this.
We do.
I don't know if Brendon knows. I don't know if Brendon knows where you're going to be, but I've been stressed for you ever since we talked about this when we were at Boy Genius.
Are you ready for it?
Yeah. Oh, Taylor Swift.
That is an iconic T-shirt.
It's very important to me. I probably should have put it. I'll tell my girlfriend not to watch, or I'll tell her to listen to it, but not watch this on the YouTubes because I told her that I'm getting a Taylor Swift shirt, but I didn't tell her what the Taylor Swift shirt was. So I want that to be a surprise to her as as I get there as we get there on Friday.
Please subscribe if you haven't already. That was
a good plug for the YouTube. Perfect.
That was a really good plug for the YouTube. But
brothers, I'm a professional for a reason.
Look, Bill, here's the thing. I am optimistic for you that this is going to go smoothly because you and I are in a group text with a friend of ours, and you had said like a week ago that you were like, I am very sure that the first song at the Boy Junior show that just happened in Columbus, that Bradley Beal is going to get traded. And I believe that I said, and predicted correctly, that was going to happen before that, and guess what? It did. So I'm feeling optimistic for you that you're going to get some normalcy while you're like jamming to whatever area you're into on Friday night.
I'd feel a little better if the sets were like half as long. Taylor is just really monopolizing a lot of the time with these marathon sets, so there's just that much more bandwidth for a big deal to go down.
Yeah, they're like 3.5. The entire show I think I've seen is like 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 40 minutes or something like that. So, and I also think there's a chance of thunderstorms and chance of rain. So there's a chance that like at about 2:30 p.m. I'm meandering. Oh no, fortunately it looks like it's going to hold off. But there's a chance of like 2:30 a.m. I'm just meandering out of Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio, looking like I just went to war, and like my phone is still buzzing because
Damian Lillard is on the Heat.
Yeah. No. At that hour, it'll be like Kobe White agreed to an offer sheet with the Orlando Magic. But yes,
Kyle Kuzma got what? And it'll be like $30 million. We'll be like, what? And I'll be like, sure. Good for you, Kyle Kuzma.
I had Kobe White on my matchmaker list, so
wow.
Thanks for
Are you kidding me?
like number one on there.
Are you kidding?
Wow.
Yes, I'm absolutely kidding.
Okay.
I did not have Kobe White.
About to be like really offended for our listeners.
That was supposed to be as natural of a transition as Bill gave us with the YouTube plug, but
sure. All right.
Then you guys
first
me.
First bit of news before we get into the matchmaking stuff. Let's talk about John Collins, who I dare we say has finally been traded. Not official yet, so I don't want to curse John Collins that he's going to have to maybe get traded again, but he's going to the Utah Jazz in what is a salary dump. The Atlanta Hawks, a time-old tradition, are ducking the salary tax. I like this for Utah, though. I understand they have a lot of bigs. They have Kessler. They have Markkanen. Kelly Olynyk, they technically have for another year unless they let him go and don't guarantee the full amount of his deal. Curious to see if he maybe becomes an FA option now. But I like the John Collins talent bet for the Jazz. Brendon, what do you think?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, why would you not at least take that roll of the dice? I mean, his contract has 3 more years on it, so I guess there's a chance it goes south. But what else do the Jazz have to spend their money on? They don't even have the kind of the Thunder have, okay, we're rebuilding, but our roster is going to get expensive sometime soon. It's like there's a Markkanen deal somewhere down there. Maybe a couple of these young Jazz guys hit, but they don't even have the roster crunch or salary crunch to look forward to. So it's a perfect value move for them. And I just think Collins is a really good player. I mean, really good for what I guess he is, which is a power forward making reasonable money that is really good in the paint. He's a good at-rim shooter, pretty solid weak side rim protector. I always thought, like, let's see what he could do if he played the 5 a little more. I don't think that's going to happen with Utah. Maybe there's some Markkanen-Collins combos, but I think they're going to start playing Kessler a lot more in year 2. The big question for him is the shooting slump that he had last year a result of, I believe it was a thumb injury, or is there just something fluky about the first few years of his career? I'm going to bet that it was just more of a fluke last year than the past, like, 4. But that's the question. I think if he can start making some threes and help space the floor, it's a solid fit, and there's no need to play him too much or this or that. It's just a good value play. Why not?
Bill?
Yeah, they gave up nothing for him is ultimately my big thing. Like, with respect to Rudy Gay, like, you know, he's been a really good pro for a long time, but it's not like, you know, you look at Atlanta's roster and, you know, perhaps they end up paying Sadiq Bey. They have Bogdan Bogdanovic. They have AJ Griffin, who they like, DeAndre Hunter, who is there but seems to be available. Jalen Johnson is there. I mean, they just have a bunch of guys on the wings. So, like, with respect to Rudy Gay, like, I don't think he doesn't seem like he's going to have much of a role. So ultimately, in terms of, like, stuff that has some level of value, Utah just traded a second-round draft pick for a guy who, you know, he's not a perfect player. He has his flaws. Like you mentioned, that shooting slump that he had last year, Brendon, is a bit of a concern. Even if, you know, I think you could probably chalk a little bit up to that with the thumb injury, and then just, like, how weird everything was in Atlanta last season. But if you get, like, not the peak version of John Collins, not the guy who averaged 20 and 10, but if you get a guy who can give you 17 and 8 a game and hit 37% of his threes for a second round draft pick on a Utah team that is still real, you know, for how nice of a story they were last year before they kind of faded away and missed the playoff. They're still in that, like, accumulate as much talent and figure out what to do later mode. Like, I don't know how this is anything other than a just remarkably good bit of business by Utah, especially because, like, how long ago was it? Because I truly do not remember off the top of my head. This is how long John Collins has been on the trade block. How long has it been that John Collins was available and it was like, oh, maybe they can get a first-round pick back for him. Maybe they can get a couple of really nice young players, this or that. Like, they essentially turned a second-round draft pick into that guy. And it's just a pure bet on town. I love it, love it, love it for Utah. And if it doesn't work, who cares? The Utah Jazz won 37 games last year.
Are you guys Harry Potter fans at all? Either one of you?
I'm a millennial, so I kind of have to be, but...
Yeah, fair. Okay. So in the second movie, there's the scene when Harry first meets the Weasleys, and the dad comes in, and he knows Harry is from a non-magic family, so he asks him what exactly is the purpose of a rubber duck. You know this scene?
Yes.
Does that ring true to you? Okay, so I put it to you this way. What exactly is the purpose of the Atlanta Hawks?
Well, it's funny you mention that, because after, you know, a thing that I'm sure will come up at some point over the course of this conversation, because it's a basketball podcast in late June of 2023, like, my mind immediately went to Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers, and how, like, this is a really good example of how important it is to cash in. Like, if you have a guy that you think you can cash in on and get stuff that helps your basketball team in one direction or another, this is a way, like, you have to be able to do that sooner rather than later. And I think what the Hawks ended up doing here, and not what I think, what the Hawks clearly ended up doing here, they dragged their feet. They waited until they could say, we got a deal where we won. And by wanting to wait that long, they ended up losing the deal for him. So now they're a team that is trying to shed money, is trying to build the one thing I will give the Hawks is that of all kind of the newer coaches in the NBA, you know, not the guys who, like, jump from one job to another, but of the guys who, I'll say of the guys who I think got into new situations in the last, 6 months or whatever, Quinn Snyder is probably the one who I trust the most to have, like, a very clear, very set, very identifiable way of how he wants to play. And now the generous way of reading it is tinkering with the roster to build a team that Quinn wants, particularly around Trey. But the kind of the more negative way of reading this is they messed around for as long as they possibly could, and as a result, they put themselves in this untenable situation where it's a guy that's not going to be a contributor for them and a second-round draft pick coming back for someone they wanted to get a first-round pick for 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 24 months ago, etc.
It seems like they're kind of the anti, people with the NFL. It was always, the team that won when the quarterback was on the rookie contract. It's like this overused kind of maxim of roster building in that league. It feels like the Hawks are just in this perpetual situation where unless they win a championship when their great draft picks are on their rookie deals, then they just restart. And the minute they get even a little bit expensive, it just becomes a panic. And I actually feel like it was kind of a curse that they got Travis Schlenk there, because he seems like a pretty good drafter. Even the guys Collins was the 19th pick. They picked Jalen Johnson, AJ Griffin, all these guys. I don't know if they're all going to be quite as good as Collins or maybe better, maybe a little worse, but they get good players every year. Onyeka Okongwu. And now it's like that's their curse because they're a cheap team. And so now it's just like restart before they ever even got off the ground, and they had one conference finals appearance and everything else, and now they're just back to square one for no real reason other than we just don't really want to have to pay to see what this team can be. We'll just roll it over, dump a salary, move on, keep it rolling. And it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to go as far as to say I'm like on Trae Young's side with a lot of this. That's maybe a bridge too far to put all the blame on Atlanta, but it's weird. On the Jazz side, I feel like they just need a point guard now. That's kind of where I went with Utah, is like they need a real point guard, not a Talen Horton-Tucker point guard, because this trade kind of makes it seem, Chris, like they want to compete at least more than they could have pivoted to tanking, getting even worse than last year. This seems like we're not going to be terrible.
Look, I think that's true, but I think they also can't afford to be patient and hunt for the right one, right? Like, I think that's the beauty of where they're at right now, is that they don't need to force anything. Markkanen's still pretty young. We'll see what happens with Clarkson if they give him money this offseason, assuming he opts out. We haven't heard, anything about that recently, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I think they can be very patient, and they have all this draft capital via Cleveland, via Minnesota, that they can then trade for one. I think if they really want someone specific, they don't need to, I think, be beholden to this free agency class. Just one last thing on the Hawks before we get done with this. They do have this massive trade exception now. And Woj, in the story that he wrote about this, said that Landry Fields has the go-ahead to go into luxury tax. I will see that when I believe that. Curious to see just if the trade exception results in anything. It's $25.3 million. That's not nothing as far as the trade exception goes if they want to seek something out. But what they just have such a weird roster. Consider all the wings they've drafted and succeeded, then they've paid. And then it's okay, do you have to flip them? Or are you going to flip DeAndre Hunter next? What is the goal of kind of what they're looking for, I think is a very real question to me of what they actually would do with any of that as far as actually improving this roster. Are you going to trade Clint Capella? What are we doing here as far as the Atlanta roster goes, and how much does this change in the next 6 months?
Brendon, real quick, is there a reason you went to the reference of teams are most likely to succeed when they have a quarterback on a rookie contract thing? Any reason at all?
I feel like you have created a reason for me, so I'll give it right back to you, and you can let us know.
Go Cardinals, baby.
Yeah, go Cardinals. Great last year of the rookie contract. We're doing great.
I'm very excited for your Brennan.
I don't know if you heard Kyler Grew. He's over 6 feet tall now.
Really?
Did you see that? We're about to do Slop of the Week. There's some NFL slop, which was somebody just decided Kyler Murray grew. He's as old as me, but apparently, it's never too late.
Did he get taller while sitting in a chair playing double XP Call of Duty weekends? Is that how you get taller at his age?
I think he did one of those surgeries, like the spine elongation, leg elongation. I don't know if you read that BuzzFeed article that went around a while back. Maybe Kyler just tried that. I don't know if it's medically good for an NFL player.
Therapy's cheap. Therapy is cheaper than those surgeries, by the way. I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon's been introducing himself to every player on the Cardinals by like grabbing them and shaking them, and I guess that just like found an extra inch in Kyler or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened.
It's like one of those like adjustable things where it's like the little clicky hole, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how you make it taller or shorter. That's Kyler Murray's legs,
like a
apparently.
tripod or like a tent. Yeah.
Yes,
Just put
yeah.
Kyler.
Yes. All right, let's move on to Naz Reid. I love that he got his money. I love this is a short deal for him as well, because if he kicks butt for 2 years, he can opt out and go hit free agency again in relatively short order. And I think the Wolves, Bill, kind of had to do this. Look, they have a lot of bigs. They have Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert making tons of money. Naz Reid is another big, but he was awesome last year. He's really been a breakthrough for them. This is someone I absolutely, if I'm them, feel like I had to keep as I continue to build around Anthony Edwards going forward. This is someone that I think they absolutely had to get something done with him. And it's good for them that I think they got this done before he could even get out on the market officially.
Yeah, because he definitely seems like the kind of guy who could have attracted interest from somewhere else. I mean, big men with his feel, his skill set on offense, his ability to stretch the floor, his efficiency near the he's not exactly prime, counting his teammate prime Rudy Gobert protecting the rim or anything like that, but he's a bigger dude. He competes. He is a good motor. Again, a really good offensive player, and he's someone who, if it comes out in a week after that first weekend of free agency kind of settles down, and we learned that there was a team somewhere out there that was really hoping they'd be able to sit down in front of Naz Reid and promise him a bigger role, promise him some money, that sort of thing, that wouldn't surprise me, because he projects out to be the kind of guy that you'd love to have on your basketball team if you have the best version of him. But at the same time, he's still so young. He is 23, turning 24 in August. He's going to hit the market again when he's, 26, 27, something like that in a few years. And he could be in line for a really big payday there. So I thought that was a great move for him. And I also think that now in the event that the Minnesota Timberwolves decide we need to do something crazy and, see if we can get something for Rudy somewhere, see if we can get something for Karl somewhere, whatever. You then have a guy in Naz Reid that knows your team, his teammates, that trust him, that sort of thing. So I really thought it was a good bit of business for Minnesota on a couple of different fronts.
I always love the guys who kind of make that bet on themselves in terms of, he was interesting at LSU. I really liked him. Then it was always just sort of, he's going to go back and he'll be a really high pick after his sophomore season. But he's like, no, I'm coming out. Then I think he's one of those guys that kind of crafted his pathway to actually kind of choose to go undrafted, and then ends up now getting paid. And it's no surprise to me that he would kind of repay the team a little bit with somewhat of a discount, although like Bill said, we don't know for sure what would have been out there, right. But it felt like there was going to be a market to take a little bit of a below market deal, but it's also a player option at the end, and he's only 23 right now, so he's going to hit free agency again when he's potentially 25. Like you could still imagine him making plenty of money, and you just look, this is a deal that came in a little bit over the mid-level exception. Who was going to pay him with cap space? Of the teams that have cap space. Like OKC is kind of interesting, Sacramento, sure, but was he any of those teams' first choices of how to use their cap space? Probably not. So it's one of those that's a win-win, but as Jake Fisher kind of wrote in the piece on it today, it's like there's a lot of ripple effects of any of the teams that had dreamt of him being their mid-level guy. Now they have to pivot, and he was one of the only good rotation bigs that could play both sides of the floor out there. So now it's like, who's panicking? And John Collins is gone too. Maybe he would have been somebody's kind of plan B.
I am really curious to see what this center market looks like beyond Naz Reid now. There's been some reporting that Pirtle's going to get the $20 million he's looking for from Toronto, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. We'll see where that ends up. I don't quite understand that price tag for Pirtle, who I like, but I don't know if he's a $20 million player.
If you want to get paid, get to Toronto.
Yeah,
just
I was gonna
end up on the Raptors, and you will get money.
I was going to say, everything that you said about why you're confused makes a lot more sense when you consider that it's the Toronto Raptors doing the business.
It's true. But like Mason Plumlee, is he the next best center on the market? Like, is someone taking a flyer on Andre Drummond on like a minimum? Like, where does the center market go for teams that are looking? Like in that Jake Fisher piece you mentioned, Jake hit me with the bell here. It mentioned that the Cavs had like interest in Naz Reid, and that either means it was just like they like the talent, or it's like they clearly wanted another big to play both sides of the ball, and because they don't think Mobley's ready to play the 5. You were never going to – I don't think you ever really realistically going to get Naz Reid on the MLE. It's why in there Fisher wrote that it was going to be a sign-and trade. There's not another center that can come close to being a guy who can help you right now, but also a long-term play for you. There's no one else in the center crop that I think fits that mold at all. So, like, does Mason Plumlee
get so young?
Yeah. So, like, does Mason Plumlee get, like, overpaid for 1 year to be this for a team? Does a team talk themselves into Andre Drummond? Does a team look at Thomas Bryant and be like, that's the light version of Naz Reid, even though he didn't play for the Denver Nuggets who just won the title? Like, I think you could see some weird center stuff kind of rippling out of this as far as that market goes.
Yeah, I think Brook Lopez is probably the one guy who will have something of a market. He's on my list later for matchmakers.
Me too. He's on my list
Beautiful.
as well.
Look at that. It's like we do a podcast together.
Are we all going to have Brook Lopez going to the same team?
I don't think I will. Mine feels like a little bit of a wild card.
Okay. Mine's not in Texas.
Mine is.
Mine's not.
All right, good.
Bill, does the team you're mentioning, is it happen to be owned by a restaurant magnate who once was on television being like kind of drunk talking about how his team needed Victor Wembanyama?
That seems like a very specific question.
It was.
I like NBA Guess Who as a segment idea, though.
Ooh, there we go.
Yeah, we do. I do.
Last thing on this, Minnesota-wise, it's just I don't want to trust that organization. They have not earned it. But Chris understands and knows my documented somewhat defense of the Rudy Gobert trade, and I feel like they're actually building depth way better than any of us would have expected if you quizzed the NBA fan base and media populace the day that the Gobert trade hit. Would they be able to get depth? Everyone would have laughed in your face. And somehow, Taurean Prince had a pretty decent season. Kyle Anderson had a career year. They traded for Mike Conley. Jaden McDaniels looks like a stud. And now they keep Naz Reid. That's like a whole rotation, you know? Yeah. And they're still maybe going to duck the tax. Maybe not. Maybe. Who cares? That's Alex Rodriguez's problem. But it's pretty nice the way they've been able to make some trades and switch D'Angelo Russell into something better, keep Naz Reid now. The vets are playing well. I don't know. It's at least a competent team that makes me think Towns, it might make sense to keep him and just kind of roll this back.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that while you're right historically about the Timberwolves and their front office deserving, I'll say it, nothing but scorn. I think it's worth mentioning that the guy currently running the show, Tim Connolly, is a guy who has a really good history of being able to build really good basketball teams, as evidenced by he did 80%, 80, 85, 90, whatever you want to say, percent of the work for the team that just won an NBA championship.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Slop of the Week time. America's favorite segment. So I'm just gonna say the slop, and then I want to turn over to Bill.
That laughter should be the intro to the segment. Actually,
yeah,
we should clip that, and then that should just be the thing that plays every week when we do this.
Jake,
this is so good.
You know what you do. It needs to include "This is so good" in there as well, because that needs to be how we transition out of it. This is so good. So Keith Pompey, I can't even talk because this has just broken my brain. Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer had a story out a couple days ago about the Tobias Harris trade market. Listed some of the teams interested, and then he gets into some of the offers and what Daryl is asking for. The theme of the story is that basically Daryl Morey is asking for obscene amounts of stuff in return for Tobias Harris. The Cleveland Cavaliers had interest, and his reported asking price was draft picks, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. Daryl Morey, Daryl Morey, you are a trade criminal. Is where I come out on this. Like, what in the world? I understand he needs to extract value out of Tobias Harris if he's going to trade him, But like that's not even being on planet Earth. That's you're on the moon, my guy. Like what? What? I have so many questions, Bill. What's up? Tell me what you think about Daryl Morey. Needs to go to the Hague? Like what prison for Daryl Morey?
Oh God, I love this. I'm sorry. This is so funny, dude. Like, there is no chance that Keith Pompey was told about this by anyone other than Daryl Morey. Like, that's my favorite thing here. Like, Daryl just throwing this out there. And honestly, why not? Why not try to do this? Like, look at the Cavs specifically, and like, I don't know if there is a really sensible trade between the Cavs and the Sixers that gets Tobias to Cleveland and helps the Sixers get stuff back, that help them build out their roster to get to the point where they could be a team that wins a championship. Like, what's that Daryl quote? Like, if you have a 5% chance of competing for a championship, you owe it to yourself to go for it. It's something along those lines. And I don't think trading Tobias for Chetty Osman, Dylan Windler, Lamar Stevens is going to help them compete, help them get closer to a championship than just keeping Tobias.
What if you put Sam Merrill in that trade?
Listen, now you're speaking my language.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, if you can't do something like that, why not, treat this like a game of NBA 2K and just be like, all right, here's a trade. What do you guys think about that? And then you're told no, and you get the answer you knew you were getting the entire time. I love this. I love everything about it. It is stupid. It is insane. And I am very, very glad that Keith Pompey learned about this, and as a result, we know about it.
Does Daryl Morey like basketball? That was just a question that came to my mind as I was reading this. And just having, like, aggressive, desperate Daryl Morey back in the NBA universe. Like, he took that job and he was kind of cruising. He got good, decent value on the Ben Simmons deal. He got his guy back. We thought he might hire Bill's guy, Mike D'Antoni, and he didn't, but he might still someday. And now it feels like we're back to the desperate version of Morey, and it just makes me wonder once again: does he like the sport? Does he watch basketball games and smile, or does his brain just kind of process, like, those weird things you'll see at like the Sloan Conference where it's like a screen of a basketball game, but then it'll just be populated with like percentages or feet between people or whatever, and it just kind of stresses you out / exhausts you. I think that's actually just a camera implanted in Daryl Morey's head. That is how he sees the game, and I don't know if he likes it. And this trade just made me think he just hates everybody who's a part of it, is what it feels like.
As Kyrie Irving said when he opted into his player option last year, normal people keep the world going, but those who dare to be different lead us into tomorrow. And I think there is nothing on this earth Daryl would like more than for that quote to apply to him.
The other part about this that I found funny as subtext is that we had Tobias Harris's father / agent is out here talking about how he's not utilized correctly by the Philadelphia 76ers and that his son's an assassin scorer. And I'm like, what? Like, my brain, it's like, I understand, you think highly of your son. Tobias Harris is like a fine player, but it's like he's talking about his son like he's like the number one scoring option on a title team. And it's
Well, listen, back in 2010, Waka Flocka Flame tweeted that Tobias Harris is the next LeBron James, so it's not like this is the first time we've heard that.
See, Bill, this is why we had you come on, because no one else I know would have pulled a Waka Flocka Flame Tobias Harris tweet out.
I don't think I am capable of forgetting it.
Okay, unless you guys want to just shit on this more.
Well, can I just ask?
Can
I just ask one thing about this? If you're one of these other GMs or president of basketball operations or like an agent that gets wind of this, how do you like? I want like a those like YouTube compilations of people like when they're in the movie theater and they see like a certain scene and it's like the fan reactions. I want that, but just like NBA GM's on the phone with Daryl Morey when he's like, "Hey, can I have Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero for Tobias Harris?" No,
It sounds
Look,
like they're all completely exhausted of the dude. If you listen to like what the insider types who are basically our fill-in for the YouTube reaction compilations,
Yeah.
they're just like everyone rolls their eyes at Daryl anytime he calls because they know it's going to be this bullshit.
All right, so instead of what I'm suggesting, Variety has this thing called Actors on Actors where they have actors like talk to each other about roles they're in. I want GM on GM, and it's like Pat Riley talking to Daryl Morey where they're supposed to like feign like respect for each other, but like 10 minutes in, you just know Pat's like done with this guy.
I think Pat Riley is the wrong person to do that with because I don't know if he's capable of faking anything. So like if he could fake respect.
So who's the right person? Palinka? Like former agent Rob Palinka?
I think Palinka would be fun for this.
I was
Finance
gonna say,
Palinka would have some fun story about like some parable or
Yeah.
something from Aesop's Fables that would work here.
I was gonna say if it's Riley, I just want Riley and Ainge. I mean, that's the one.
Yeah.
I mean, like legitimate blood feud types of stuff. No, so the only Tobias destination that I could find, because we all knew that there was going to be some, again, desperation when it came to Tobias Harris. He is the thing standing between the Sixers and any sort of cap flexibility. The Knicks, but the deal is disgusting. So I want you guys to cover your faces or whatever. I mean, it basically has to be some combination of Randall and something. And when you watch the Sixers in the playoffs, I don't know if you thought, can we get another guy in there who moves the ball less than what we have? I don't know if that was quite the fix that basketball hater Daryl Morey would have had in mind.
I'm sure Joel Embiid would love playing with Julius Randle. I'm sure he would just have a great time with Julius Randle.
That team would set an NBA record for the most guys bumping into each other.
Yeah.
Tyrese Maxey would just be going so fast that he might like run into Julius Randle, who's just like standing there like jabs. Like it just would not work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could get quickly out of it, could I sell you guys on it? If the Sixers could get quickly and then they just have Randle and it is what it is with Randle, maybe they just say you're coming off the bench, brother. And no, I don't think that. I just don't think it's possible. But that's the problem with the Knicks is any trade has to have Randle in it, basically.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, more on that later.
Great.
Wow.
Good tease from me.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to matchmaker. NBA free agency's basically here. So we're going to put some guys there. It could be free agents. It could be trades. We each have 3, I believe, and I have one that I couldn't get to. I'm going to do my big one first because this is the thing that annoys me the most. I'm getting Damian Lillard out of Portland. I'm just like tired of hearing every Dame update. I am tired of this dragging on. So let's get Dame to Miami. Let's just do it. The trade that I have here that works that I don't think realistically Portland would do because I think they would want Hero. Even though like they have a lot of guards, so I'm not exactly sure why they would totally need Hero, but that's a different conversation. Dame to Miami, Lowry's expiring, Oladipo's expiring, Jovic and 3 unprotected firsts. They can go into Portland gets to go to Henderson and Simons and Sharp, and we get Dame, Butler, and Bam. We get a really interesting team in the East. Dame can claim that like he didn't go to a super team because like it's not like all NBA guys or whatever. I just want I just want Dame to either move on right now or I don't want to ever hear about this again the rest of his career. It's time to shit or get off the pot as far as Damian Lillard being in Portland goes to me.
Bill, you made a noise. I'm going to let you take us away here.
Yeah, my thing is that, I mentioned this back when we were talking about the Jazz and them getting John Collins. When you say not including Hero in this, I think that Portland is one of those teams that if you're getting rid of Dame, you have to be in asset accumulation mode. You have to be trying to get as much stuff back as you possibly can. And of course, this situation's unique because in the event they were to trade Damian Lillard, I don't think they would go full bid war. Everyone has to give us the most that you possibly can, and then we take the most out of it. They want to do right by him. Having said that, I think that they would have to take Hero back. They would have to get him, if only so they can then have another guy who they could potentially trade. Like if they get Hero back and he averages 24 a game on a team that nobody watches, Suddenly he has a ton of trade value coming off of that, and then you can turn him into other things as you build around Simons, Sharp, and Scoot. Just now realizing the alliteration there. That's I hope their marketing department has fun with that. So I would probably that's really my only complaint here. But otherwise, I don't think I'd have a problem with not hearing about how committed Dame and the Blazers are to one another ever again.
Did you know Nikola Jovic was born in the UK? He's Serbian. He was born
from
in Leicester,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Up the Foxes, baby.
Is he? I wonder how. Is he excited about Harry Winks? One wonders.
He has never made threes in his whole life, so I have a hard time believing in that guy. I know nothing about his game, but I did do a deep dive there for a moment to see, hey, could they convince themselves he's a shooter? I do like the idea of Kyle Lowry being the salary in some ways, Chris, just to play devil's advocate on your behalf, because I do think he's the kind of guy, if he goes to Portland, that would probably be chill, making a lot of money and being a good influence on a bunch of young guards, and also playing a style that they don't really have to, compete with.
Or he gets put on the Al Horford Oklahoma City Thunder rehabilitation plan, and he can go he can get bought out in a couple months and play for the Lakers or whomever.
The last year that buyouts ever matter, and Kyle Lowry can be the crown jewel of those.
Look, I think Bill is right. I think Hero has to be in this deal if this is going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way around that. I think my thought process is just I think Hero plus Simons plus Scoot plus Sharp is just to me there's a lot of overlap in if you're starting from there. And yes, you're going to be bad, that's the point. But even though I would bet on those Miami picks not being the greatest thing in the world just cuz that's Miami just doesn't ever get to that place necessarily. They usually figure stuff out. I might just kind of want the extra picks just because time at some point. Jimmy's a little bit older. How long is Pat Riley going to actually stay in charge there? Does that when he steps down? Yeah, he'll be 105 and just going for rings, and I would respect that if that's the case. He is wired a certain way, obviously. I just wonder if the extra picks might just be theoretically more appealing than just because I would want Simons and Sharp and Henderson to just get the reps, and Hero would take away some of that oxygen. And then Simons and Hero on the same roster just seems like a lot of redundancy to me. Even on a bad team, I would kind of just want to set up Henderson and Sharp to build positive habits, and Simons plus Hero I feel might make that a little bit harder, but that might just be me.
Is there a third team that would give up picks for Hero? Could you make it a 3-team deal that Hero goes somewhere else, and then a team that maybe just needs some scoring but has some salary to throw out could just take Hero?
I should have thought of that, but I'm sure you could find one. I don't think Hero...
The Knicks come to mind again because apparently I'm obsessed with them. But there's only so many teams that can take Hero and what he does, and the Heat are one of them. That's part of the issue here.
Could you see maybe Charlotte? Him and LaMelo, it's a lot of scoring, not a lot of defense, but it's
the
buckets.
Pelicans came to mind as another one.
I like the Pelicans option.
Who could kind of fit in. They needed a little bit more ball handling and shooting, and they have a lot of young guys that they could just throw to Portland and some salaries. Could you,
Yeah, because the fact he's about to start year one of a 4-year deal that's 27, 29, 31, 33 as the cap is going up. There's a lot of value in that. I think you're inherently going to try and think of the good teams that could use a guy like him. But if you're a team like Orlando and you want to add a little scoring punch on the perimeter, he's not a bad guy to take a swing on if you want to try to accelerate your timetable a little bit.
Can we throw the Isaac salary and he can just get cut by Portland, and then
can we somehow sneak Jalen Suggs to Miami if we're going to do this?
Sure.
Oh, God, I still have all my Jalen Suggs stock.
So do I.
We do too.
Do not plan on getting rid of that anytime.
Yeah, I'm not either. That guy is at the very least an incredibly rugged guard defender, and I just trust the work ethic. He is not going to be one of the best 3 guys in that class, but if he gets squeezed out of Orlando, I would be pouncing on him as a second contract guy if I was another team in need of guards, particularly a defensive minded guard. Did either of you have anything else with Dame?
I did not.
Okay. See, I thought this is where we might get some overlap, just because he is the big, he is like the big beacon of shit happening right now, and
That makes sense.
it's
We're to
frustrating.
the point with Dame where it's going to be relief when it happens versus interest, and I hate that that's where we are. But
I think I lost my peak interest in this when people started caring about if Will Smith's that song was playing in the club behind him. I'm like,
That
what
was
we think?
funny.
I know.
Sorry.
I know, but it's like when people are dissecting it like Zapruder film, I'm just a little like, okay, like have you gone like, and then it's like every day we're getting updates and statements, and I'm just like,
fun thing on the Miami song playing. That happened while you and I were at the Boy Genius concert, Chris, and then I got home and I was really tired, and I went, oh God, that's way too funny. I should probably blog it. So I blogged it, and then I went to bed.
Bill, what song would be playing in the club for you if you were in a passive-aggressive non-trade standoff with your employer? If that you were going to be like, hey, Robbie and Martin, trade me, like what song's playing in the background?
Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius.
It's good. I would have went Salt in the Wound just to be really sad. Just really sad. Just Salt in the Wound,
all right, can I go next?
good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go, Brennan.
Okay, so
Well, can I suggest one thing?
Yes, yes.
If the name you want to say here is Brooke Lopez, skip that for now, and then we will all do Brooke Lopez time another time, a little bit later.
Okay, then I will do my big one. We'll just go to our biggest ones.
Cool.
Karl-Anthony Towns. As much as I just said it might be time to keep him and just try to roll it back because they actually have some depth. KAT and Taurean Prince to the Clippers.
Ooh.
For Paul George. And maybe the Clippers actually have to send something. I don't really know. Or maybe the Wolves have to send more. I actually would be open to input from you two. But I think the Clippers get to make their expensive person younger and bigger. The Wolves get at least one more year of a player who fits awesomely with what would become their two best players in Ant and Gobert. I think the only reason that I'm hesitant on it from Minnesota's standpoint is you could just lose Paul George in a year, and then the KAT asset becomes nada. That's a huge risk, so there would have to be some back channeling of convincing Paul George, who seems to love the LA lifestyle, to come to the Midwest again. Or again.
Yeah, would Podcast P still be the same in Minneapolis?
The Bucket Studios are in LA, so I don't know if it works.
Oh, okay, tough for him.
Might have to be a remote pod, some Zoom.
Could he be the king of? Would he be the king of St. Cloud? Is like a real question I would have, but So I like this in theory because I think it feels like the clip. There's something. People keep like talking and writing about the Clippers like there's nothing going on, but there's clearly like some going on, and it's probably centered around PG and Kawhi's extensions. Would kind of be because Zach Lowe has said that, and to put it explicitly out there, but. And clearly the Clippers are not in a position to not be good. Like we've heard a bajillion times about the stadium coming, and like I don't think that's in Ballmer's DNA to like take a huge step back. They don't they're still pick fallout and stuff. The question I think, Brendan, that I think you hit on that is right, is the KAT asset part of this. Because the Wolves, if they're going to deal him, have to get something back that's going to last them to build around Ant. And I wonder if there would be hesitation that Paul George is at his age, with his injury history, and with having to pay him a bunch of money. That's where I think that gets dicey.
What if the Wolves just said, we'll be the team to give you the big extension that the Clippers won't? We'll give you 4 or 5 years. I think it would just be 4 at the max that you want.
Yeah.
Our team would already have been expensive because we already had that money committed to KAT. So if the Clippers won't pay you, we will. That might be the way to get him. And it's like, I hate Minnesota. I can ask out in 2 years if I don't want it, but at least they'll give me the money.
Yeah. I don't think that's unreasonable to do if you're Minnesota, honestly. I'm also just a KAT skeptic to some degree. Like, really good shooter, up and down in the playoffs, just he's kind of in prove it territory, which is kind of crazy to say considering how much money he's already making.
Yeah, it's a weird one because in theory, I completely agree that finding a new home for Paul George and finding a new home for KAT are like two things that feel like they should be possible. But I look at it from two perspectives. and it's why I question. I wonder if they'd be for one another. One is that Paul George, like you mentioned, his contract and his injury history. With the last couple of years, 56 games, 31 games, 54 games, 48 games, just hasn't been able to stay on the floor in Los Angeles. And maybe you're able to convince yourself it's not as big of a deal as Kawhi's injury issues, because for him, this is something that Zach Lowe mentioned, but like he hurts this and then he hurts this somewhere else in his body and then he hurts that. And it's just like, seems like rotten luck. But I don't know if that's a bet that a team like Minnesota, I love the KAT fit in Los Angeles. I think he'd be an awesome, awesome fit there. And I think the fact that, he's kind of prone to disappointing in the playoffs is mitigated a bit by the fact that Kawhi is just such a playoff killer. But I think the other side of it is if the Timberwolves, because the Timberwolves went all in on Rudy Gobert with the thought that Ant is our guy and we have one chip that we could cash, and it is Karl-Anthony Towns. If we have to shake this up, it has to be Karl-Anthony Towns. And are you shaking it up? Are you cashing in that KAT chip to get Paul George, who could potentially walk after a year? So I like the idea in theory. If you could promise me that Paul George going to Minnesota would immediately be followed up by Paul George signing an extension, and they kind of just live with the fact that the last year of that might go, I don't know about that, I'd be on board with it. But I have just a little bit of skepticism about this one.
I just love the idea of Ant and PG. I think those two guys, you can have a Conley as your ball handler. You can have no point guard as your ball handler and be okay. I really like it as a basketball trade. I agree with you guys that as a KAT reality, real world trade, there are some question marks. But it's going to be fascinating to see how these huge salaries flip around. I mean, we already saw what happened with Beal. We just talked about Dame. There's a lot of them, and it's just like, it feels like it's going to be the Wall, Westbrook, Chris Paul triumvirate repeated, where they're all just going to get traded for one another. And so it wouldn't surprise me if we got at least one of those this offseason or next offseason, but we'll see who it ends up being. What's your first
the
one,
other
Bill?
thing?
Go
Last thing I'll say about the Paul George thing is that if you're betting on accelerating the Anthony Edwards timeline, that also should be part of your calculus here. And Ant and Paul George and Jaden McDaniels as like a big wing trio 2 through 4 would
yes, please
whip. That would absolutely whip. And like honestly, that might be okay for Gobert too. It might make his role really simple. It would make his offensive role not exactly what it was in Utah, because like it's just a different circumstance, and Ant's like a little different than Mitchell and things. But I wouldn't hate that. The more I've thought about this, Brendan, the more I like it.
Yeah,
it's hilarious to me again to be on the defense of the Gobert deal. That his contract is just not terrible anymore. When you really look at how much he's making compared to literally Towns, who's going to make $60 million by the end of that. He's only making 41, Gobert. Beal, Lillard, Towns, the George extension we were just talking about. Like, this stuff's going to get insane. Booker's on a supermax, Durant, those guys in Phoenix. Like, Gobert's money is totally doable. I'm curious. They have Towns on this is the last year of his 36, which is a part of why you're, I think, seeing a lot more rumors around him than the previous year. Although, obviously, it was only last year the Gobert trade happened. But next offseason, he becomes 50, and that's a lot harder to trade. So if they're going to do something, it makes sense to try it right now.
Yeah. So my
Bill,
first
what's your first?
one,
Hit me.
I didn't have any trades in here for a reason that I will explain at the end of this segment that is really bad. But the first team that I went to was the Sacramento Kings. And after they moved Rashawn Holmes, they have about $35 million in cap space. I believe I've seen from the estimates that they can go out and do something. And it seems like their big thing is they want to improve on Harrison Barnes, a player who's been really good for them, struggled a bit in the playoffs, has been a really steady veteran hand, but they see a situation where they could potentially upgrade there. And obviously the money they might want to give Domantas Sabonis is a bit hanging over this. So they've been linked to Draymond Green. I would be shocked in a way that I cannot put into words if they actually were able to get Draymond Green out of Golden State. I don't think the Warriors are nearly foolish enough to let him walk. So I put two guys down. One is a restricted free agent, someone who I think would be a little bit more gettable, someone who I actually put him down, and then Zach Lowe mentioned him potentially going there on his most recent podcast, and that's Grant Williams. He's a guy who I think could slide into that Harrison Barnes role. He's a little bit younger, a little bit more on the Kings timeline. He's a bit of a risk in that, we saw him fall out of the rotation in Boston for a spell last year for one reason or another, but he's a guy who I think what he has done for Boston can scale up. And I think could scale up in a way that would be really beneficial on the Kings, especially in that offense with how smart he is, with his ability as a shooter. And then the big swing guy I want to see them go for. And I have no idea if there's a way they can make this work financially. I have no idea if he would be interested in anything other than getting the bag from his current team. And that is Jeremy Grant. I would love it if they could go after a guy like him, potentially, maybe we'll see 2 days into free agency, he hasn't put pen to paper because he also wants to see what's happening with Damian Lillard. And maybe maybe Dame decides, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to leave. And Jeremy goes, well, I don't want to be kind of just floating around aimlessly. I want to go to a team in a little bit better of a situation. And I would love to see the Kings take a swing on a guy who averaged 20 a game last year, shot 40% from three, has really good length, is able to impact games at the defensive end of the floor when he's really engaged over there. So I don't know if that one's possible. Of those two, Grant Williams makes a lot more sense to me, but I just had that idea pop into my head. And I was like, oh God, I would actually really like to see Jeremy Grant alongside De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and everyone else they have out there in Sacramento.
Chris, are you a Jeremy Grant guy? I don't think we've really talked much about him.
I think he is fine. I think it is interesting how he has... how Aaron Gordon kind of slid into his role and more willingly ate it up, because he clearly wanted something bigger for himself and he chased that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's kind of curious to me what he wants and what he is chasing and what he's willing to sacrifice or not sacrifice. Because there was all this stuff. It's I want to be a lead option. I want to be a number one guy. He's actually also on my list. Jeremy Grant is on my list here, and in a one that I think you guys might shoot down. But I'm curious to see what he wants at this one, because this is his last time to cash in. Does he want to just get a lot of shots up and do that? Does he want to go to a situation where he can be part of something bigger and kind of go back into a situation he was in Denver? The Kings to me would be that, right? He would be really additive to them. He'd be a better player than Barnes in that spot. I really like that fit. I like Grant or him for Sacramento. I like Grant if he can go somewhere where if we're going to get a Grant that's willing to go into a spot, I should specify Jeremy Grant, not Grant Williams. If he's going to go somewhere where he's going to kind of fit in what he's kind of developed into a bigger context, I love him. If he just wants to be give me lots of money and make a lot of shots guy, I respect that. But I also just want more for you in terms of what you're going to accomplish.
The big thing with him, I think, looking at kind of the track record, because he's had 3 different careers, or at least he's been 3 different types of player, I'll say. Last year, obviously, he made a bunch of his threes, and that's the big reason that his efficiency went up. But he's never really been a high turnover player, and that's good for somebody who has upped his usage and hasn't necessarily sacrificed that part of his game. But he started getting to the free throw line more the past few years, and that's been since he went to Detroit, he's gotten to the line more, and he's a good free throw shooter. And so it kind of gives me the impression that maybe there is a little bit more of an old man game Jeremy Grant that could adapt to a different situation and be a little bit of a combination of the Oklahoma City / Denver version and the more recent version. I don't think he's as overpowering as an Aaron Gordon, and I know you're just throwing that out there because of the Denver comp, Chris. I know you're not saying that they're the same player, but
yeah, they're not.
That's the tough part about him is it's he's not really a 4, but he's also not a great athletic 3. He's always been this kind of tweener, and I think that part of he's never really figured that out. And so I don't really know what I want next to Domantas Sabonis. I think that's a good question. I probably want somebody a little more defensively impactful. Because I really like Keegan Murray, and I think he's somebody that can be a shooter, attack closeout guy. He has good size, but he's actually decently nimble. So I think he can kind of be some of what Jeremy Grant is. I don't know. It's a good question, especially as they're about to extend Sabonis. Is just sort of what do you want? So if I was going to do the Grant deal, I guess what I'm saying here is I would do it for a shorter 2 years or something, just to bridge the gap to, okay, what does Murray actually look like? What's Davion Mitchell? What are these other guys,
Yeah, and that was the major reason why I split it between Jeremy Grant and Grant Williams, because I think if you're trying to if you're basically hoping that you're concerned about Jeremy Grant kind of downsizing his role, his impact, that sort of thing, I get it, and I think Grant Williams is a guy who can be a Harrison Barnes type for them. But I just think the Kings off of last season really have an opportunity to build while also acknowledging, and again, this is something that I was going to say, and then Zach Lowe said it, so I feel like I am copying him a bit, but it's not. They went 48-34 last year. They were a great team during the regular season. At the same time, you look at the teams who are directly behind them. Would we be stunned if the Suns, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Lakers, and then one more team from down in that morass, from 8 down in the Western Conference, find a way to be better than the Kings next year through health, through consistency, whatever? I'd be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be completely shocked. So I think it's an opportunity for them to get some reinforcements and be able to build off of what they were able to accomplish last season, while also going, all right, DeMontis, here's the money that you obviously deserve.
Bill, let me ask you one follow-up to this. Why Grant Williams or Jeremy Grant over, let's say, Kyle Kuzma for the Kings?
Well, I think, and Jeremy Grant does kind of throw this out of whack, I think Kyle Kuzma is just such an offensive-minded guy. And he's I think what he's done in recent years, I think he actually doesn't get the credit that he deserves, because I think I think he kind of had a reputation of being a guy who kind of was just there on those Lakers teams. When I think he's a guy who has been willing to accept roles, so he certainly is a guy who could fit in there. But yeah, I suppose you can lump him in there if you view him as a guy who could potentially fit there. Maybe you just want someone who's a little bit more willing to accept a smaller role than potentially Kuzma wants. But also, for all we know, the Wizards are going to offer him a max contract because the Washington Wizards don't make any sense. So who the hell knows?
Yes.
Chris, I see your Jeremy Grant thing. I'll just throw real quick on Grant Williams. Yeah. If we're just talking mid-level for the most likely, I know the Kings have cap space, but my interesting one for Grant Williams was Memphis. I thought that would be kind of fun, especially if they eventually get closer and closer to Jaren being more of a center. Then Grant can kind of be a good 4-man option in a lineup like that. But he also could play, the 3 at times, I suppose, next to Jaren and Adams. He's just a versatile piece for them, shoots the ball, just kind of fits what they are as a team and is young. So yeah. I like that one, but I don't really know what Memphis is going to do. The smart thing, obviously, throws some things off kilter. Also, maybe Marcus Smart and Grant Williams have beef we don't know about.
I would just say on the Grant Williams point, I think any good team could use Grant Williams. Yeah. Scales up, can shoot, isn't afraid of going at people. I understand people made fun of him because of the Jimmy Butler stuff. I kind of like that he did that. I like that he has that in him.
It seemed like most Celtics fans were actually kind of thank God Grant actually gives a shit right now.
Yeah. Every guy on the Celtics, other than Grant and then you have your Marcus Smarts and your Al Horfords of the world who were just kind of wired like this. They were just moping around. They legitimately seemed like they were convinced things were done, and obviously they were able to rally back. But there is something to, we just got our ass kicked, but we have to stay the course. That you want a guy, especially a guy like Grant, who you're going to sick on the other team's best player and say, we need you to battle against him on the defensive end of the floor. You want to have a guy who's kind of wired that way.
Yeah. like if the Kings got the Warriors again next year, let's say, or they played the Lakers or they played the Nuggets, like he's gonna mix it up in those series, and you're gonna need some of that defensively, particularly if Sabonis is gonna be their 5. You need someone like Grant Williams, I think, to supplement that. And look, Kuzma, on that point, I wouldn't shock me if he ended up in Sacramento, but we haven't seen him be that defensive kind of guy since he left the Lakers.
I have a Kuzma one.
Okay.
So we'll get to Kuzma.
All right, here's my Jeremy Grant one. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this one because I think it's maybe a little bit dumb, but it popped into my head. I wanted to do something with him. If I was going to say we're getting rid of Dame, I wanted to do something with Jeremy Grant. So that's the origin of this. 3-team trade here. Jeremy Grant gets signed and traded to the Knicks. Obi Toppin and a 2024 second via the Pistons goes to Portland. And then Evan Fournier and a 2025 second get dumped to San Antonio. So Vic, we call Victor Wembanyama Vic here, not Wemby. It's a Brendan edict, calling him Vic, so he sounds like an adult.
Also, real quick, just while we're on this topic, he's 7'3". Also an edict. He said it at that kids event, and everyone wants. Like sometimes I swear, the next time I turn on the TV, we're going to be calling Victor Wembanyama 8'2". Like he's 7'3". It's okay. That's also still very tall. But he's not 7'5", he's not 7'4". He told us how tall he is. We don't need to do it for the content. He is 7'3".
Did he have shoes on? Did he have shoes on when he said that? Okay.
I'm just going to trust what he told us. I don't know if he meant shoes or not. But he's a grown-up. He can tell us his own height.
That's true. He seems like a little more solid for his age.
Soul.
So look, the San Antonio part of this, you get a Frenchman to play with Vic, you get a second, whatever. You have to spend the money on something anyway. The Knicks needed dump Fournier in the worst way, just to kind of clear up some money and clear up some roster stuff. Toppin, Blazers take a flyer on him. I like kind of what Toppin is. I think he should probably play a little bit more. I think he get a chance to spread his wings in Portland. And for the Knicks, the Jeremy Grant thing, there would be some overlap positionally with Randall. I think there would be some weirdness there. But I think they can play together. I think him as a 3, as some shooting, would give them a lot of size, 2 through 4, and with the backline of Robinson, you get longer on the wing, which I think would be good. And then you go Brunson, Barrett, Grant, Randall, Robinson as your 5 with Hart, Quickly, Grimes, and Hartenstein off the bench. That's just like a solid team. It's not the big star needle-moving trade I think the Knicks are kind of searching for, that I think the fan base is probably searching for. But I just kind of like the idea of Jeremy Grant there. And that makes that Knicks team just a really solid, really competitive team. And I think Grant would do well there, even if I think the him and a Randall thing would be a little weird there to kind of navigate. That would be a challenge for Tibbs to kind of navigate.
It's that, and it's also the star swing that you're talking about. I think it's just I can't imagine the Knicks convincing themselves into this being the move. But on the other hand, it's not like it's cost. They're not giving up their best chips. Right?
Everything,
so it's sort of just
It's
continue to be respectable. Continue to get a little better on the margins of your team. And honestly, the part of it that intrigues me, that's a different kind of bigger conversation, is both Quickly and Toppin are extension eligible this summer. And so just sort of, do they want to be the ones to give out those extensions? What number do those come in at? And then, the Knicks are getting to the point where the theoretical trade starts to become a little closer to reality when the numbers aren't. And then those young guys, it's more like the young guy that cost this much, the young guy that cost this much. Did we overpay? Did we underpay? They had it with Barrett last summer, and these two will be another one. So maybe there is a little bit of value to roll that over a little bit, get something different, and then, maybe it is a player like Grant. Maybe it's actually get a little younger, get picks for those guys. I don't know. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, you can flip them again.
I was going to say, I like the idea of Obi Toppin going somewhere new. I think that's kind of the big thing here. I just want to see that guy who he hasn't gotten nearly enough opportunities. I think in New York, he's always been a really fun player when he's gotten onto the floor, and I think having him be part of what would end up being a youth movement in Portland in this situation would be. I'd really like that. I think Grant is just a guy who can get his, and I think we saw with the Knicks, they just kind of lack enough guys who can go out and get theirs. It's like Randall is just such an up and down player. Barrett is such an up and down player that you're banking on Jalen Brunson, and then you're just hoping you can cobble together something with the rest. So the fact that they're not really giving up a ton of stuff, it's picks, it's getting off of Fournier's deal and giving Vic a French guy to like go to restaurants to. I don't know what French people smoke long, thin cigarettes together, and like Toppin to get a guy who can bolster a thing that you need without diving in. And this is the big thing here, without diving into your real valuable collection of draft capital, without having to move a Quentin Grimes, an Emmanuel Quickly, a Mitchell Robinson type of dude. I like the framework of that deal.
You know why I also like this, Chris, the more that I think about it, is it gives them the pivot away from Randall eventually. If eventually they do find a deal where Randall goes out, then you have kind of that secondary scorer. Maybe some of these young guys evolve into becoming that, but you're not restarting if you end up moving Randall or lacking depth. You kind of then you have your sort of replacement for him. Plus, if you sign Grant for the right contract, maybe he's movable down the line. You're not ruining your flexibility necessarily. Also, the Toppin thing. Some of the lineups from an athleticism standpoint that they could throw out there, if Toppin ended up in Portland, of Scoot, Sharp, Simons, Toppin, and hopefully somebody that's not Drew Eubanks or Yusuf Nurkic, so that my dreams could come true. They just need some sort of athletic center, and I'll be good to go.
And get them a coach. Get them a coach who just will let them fly. Get me like their version of Will Hardy, and we're cooking in Portland.
I have a Cavs one. Are we ready to pivot to our next?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. I like. So I did
Jared
ask.
Allen. It's pretty tame.
Okay. So Evan Mobley and a second rounder for
Yes.
Tobias Harris.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Evan Mobley for Paul Reed. That's
Ooh,
what I dreamt up. Okay. No, it's a mid-level, and it's Max Strus.
Love it.
I just want this really bad. I want the Cavs to have a cape. I want them to have 5 total basketball players. So this gets us closer to that dream. And I want them to have a guy who can play in the playoffs. And I think with the mid-level, there's not a lot of those. You're not getting Cam Johnson. Maybe you're getting Grant Williams. I don't know if he's really a 3, especially with how big your team already is. So probably not a good.
I don't think Grant's. I think Grant's above the mid-level, like pretty comfortably.
Sure. Maybe he is. So then that's not an option either. So I like kind of slotting in somebody who we know has played in the playoffs. I think his defense is exploitable but playable, and who is totally chill to just stand there and shoot. But also, if he needs to attack a closeout and play smart and keep the ball moving, be actually involved in an offense if they do that. Offense, sometimes they didn't in the postseason. Then he can do that too. So I don't know if you're getting him from Miami for just the mid-level, but if he's available, if he wants to play in Cleveland, maybe if there's a bigger trade in Miami that would put him down a few rungs from a salary or role standpoint, then I would be that would be plan 1AAA for me if I'm Cleveland.
My next one was going to be Max Strus to the Pistons.
Oh, I like that fit for the Pistons too if they're trying to elevate it. That's also like a twist on the obvious throw all the money in the world at Cam Johnson to reunite him with Monty Williams.
Yeah, and it involved this is basically the fact that the Pistons can go to a slightly different place than the Cavs can. I believe they could sign him into cap space, but I love him on the Cavs. The only reason I didn't think about them is because I thought a team like Detroit could potentially come in and give him a bit of money, and they could really, really use his skill set around that group of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Osar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. It makes a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic extendable. Bojan Bogdanovic, apologies. He becomes a little bit more expendable. You can go out there, see if you can get something out of him from a team that's a little bit more desperate to win right now. And it's not like Bogdanovic was doing this incredible lifting up of Detroit's offense last year anyway. I mean, obviously, Monty Williams is in, Dwayne Casey is out, but last year they were 22nd in three-point field goal percentage, 29th in points per game, 28th in offensive rating, 27th in effective field goal percentage. And all of this comes with here were their top 3-point shooters last year. Rodney Magruder, who is an unrestricted free agent. Alec Burks, who is a team option. They're likely to pick it up. Bogdanovich and Corey Joseph, who is an unrestricted free agent. This is just a team that really needs shooting, really needs a guy who can help juice their offense and add some dynamism on the perimeter around 3 guys in Cunningham, in Ivy, and in Thompson particularly, who just don't really have that in their locker right now. So I was thinking Strus to Detroit, but Strus to Cleveland would be awesome. He would be such a good fit in Cleveland that I'm kind of mad I didn't think about that one.
So one thing on this, to again play devil's advocate a little bit on my own point here, Strus is a guy who's made like nothing in the NBA money-wise. So I would not hate it for him to go where the best offer is if the playing time is similar and it's a team that's at least trying to win. He's 27 already, so if he's looking for a 3-4 year deal, it could be the only one. You know, if I'm him, I'm looking at it as, yeah, this might be my chance. And I'm coming off a finals appearance where I played pretty awesome for a lot of that playoffs until, you know, the finals he was pretty cold. I think we might as well just talk about Cam Johnson briefly because you brought it up, Chris. Mm-hmm. I would be very nervous. I know we were talking about Paul George and how sometimes the injuries are to the random stuff, and Towns is the same way and everything. Cam Johnson's been hurt every single year of his career for a decade almost, dating back to like his senior year of high school. He was medically red flagged in the draft. He never has had the hip stuff, which caused him to be medically red flagged, but he's had damn near every other thing you could dream of. He's injured by the playoffs every single year. He's a good player. I think he's overrated defensively because he was on a top 10 defense in Phoenix. Watch some highlights of what Luka Doncic did in the second round in 2022. Cam Johnson was getting bowled over. I understand it's Luka, but you know, size-wise, you'd think Cam is a pretty good option. So I know it's the Pistons. They're not trying to defeat Luka Doncic in the playoffs, but when we're talking about $25-30 million for that guy, I would be pretty worried, and he's already into his, you know, mid to late 20s because he was an old guy when he came out. So,
yeah,
what do you think of Cam?
That's what I was going to say. Is just like he is sneaky old for a second contract guy. Now we're calling 27-year-olds old.
I don't like that.
You know, I don't like that either. As a
It's
recently
super
minted,
old. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I'm recently minted 30 years old. So you know what? Eat it, Brendan. You're like what? 20? How? What are you? 26?
17.
You're 17 years old. Jesus.
Yeah.
You're only 2 years younger than Jason Tatum.
Exactly. Yeah. Catching up.
Yeah.
That's not how age works.
But I also like get it from the Pistons standpoint, like why they might try to do this, just because A, like they're trying to build something longer term with Monty, get one of Monty's guys in there, and B, he would just like replace the Sadiq Bey-ness that is now gone in Atlanta. Like, and I think I would rather pay Cam Johnson than I would pay Sadiq Bey.
Sure. Yeah. When I see the Atlanta stuff getting thrown around of like they need to create flexibility to give an extension to Sadiq Bey, I just kind of shudder. I don't really understand that. But yeah, I don't think Cam with the Pistons is terrible. I mean, look, they have $31 million in cap space. They're not going to have to pay many of their guys for a while. So it's not like it'd be the end of the world, but whoever gives Cam that type of money, I would just be a little worried that the return on investment will get a little creaky and a little scary. Do we have any more, or can we go to Brook Lopez to round things out?
Any more, Bill?
I got nothing.
Good. All right, Brook Lopez time.
Yeah.
All right. So, Bill, as the guest, what's your Brook Lopez one? You can go first.
I hate doing the thing that's been thrown out there by everyone, but I really do love his fit in Houston. And I love that he's a veteran guy, someone who I think, you know, with the new head coach in Ime Udoka, who's going to want to build things in the defensive end of the floor, I think bringing in a guy like Brook Lopez, who can bring that kind of defensive solidity and can be a guy that you build around and can really hammer home the importance of being good and solid on the defensive end of the floor. Mixing that with his shooting and just kind of his general sense of professionalism, I think he'd be a really good mentor to a guy like Alperen Şengün. And then kind of my big thing here is that I think he's someone, and maybe I'm totally wrong about this, but I think he's someone who would age gracefully, both as a player He's going to be turning 36 next season, and as a guy who would go, assuming those back issues don't flare up that hurt him, not last season, but the season before, but also could be a guy who, after a year in the starting lineup, is maybe willing to hand that baton off to Şengün. So I do like the fit. I also just really like Brook Lopez and want him to get paid one more time before his career comes to an end. So that's where I had him.
Chris, we had the same thing.
I love this for us. All right, so
we're just Thunder fans.
We're just Thunder fans. So here's my pitch. Brook Lopez to the Oklahoma City Thunder, 3 years, $15 million a year per. They have some cap space to do this. Maybe we could do the last year partially guaranteed because he's going to be a little bit late 30s by then. Like, Lord knows how, if the injuries ever come or anything like that. I understand they have Chet coming back, and he's going to probably play some 5. But he's going to come in really skinny off of injury, and he's really young. Why not take away some of the brunt and have a guy to teach him how to play defense and be a pro and bring Brook Lopez in to do that and be an awesome defensive anchor for you? And they have SGA, who is a first-team All-NBA guy. So I think you should be aggressive with a guy who has proven himself to be that good and is on the up and heading towards his prime. I wanted to try to trade for like Mitchell Robinson or something like that here instead of the Brook Lopez thing for the Thunder. I want to talk about them because I just really like a lot of the. I love what they're building there with Jalen Williams, the wing Jalen Williams, SGA, Chet. Brook Lopez to me would be like a fun back-end veteran thing, and it wasn't. And look, I think he probably just ends up back in Milwaukee unless he gets overwhelmed by an offer, just because I kind of suspect he just maybe goes back there. They can't replace him otherwise. But if he goes somewhere else, I think he would fit really, really nicely in the Thunder, especially if they are, I think what they should do, accelerate what's going on there just a little bit.
They are a team that wants to play 5 out. And there's only so many guys that can protect the rim because they were not a great rim protection team and they were not a great defensive rebounding team. There's only so many guys who can fill that but also keep up with their identity as a 5-out team offensively. And obviously Brook Lopez is one of those. So I think it's perfect. I don't know what the offer necessarily is. If you told me it was all of their cap space, which is like $19 million, great. To me, with Chet, with Ousmane Dieng, who's a player that is pretty interesting if you caught him toward the end of last year, and even Poku, that's 3 guys who are developing quote-unquote bigs, but pretty small and pretty raw, like frame-wise small. And so I would love the idea of having an actual big man veteran next to those guys to kind of bring them along. And like you said, be willing to step away at a certain point, like you were saying with Houston, Bill, that it would probably be short term. I mean, I think Lopez is 34 or 35, so you're not giving this guy 4 years, right? But 1-2 year deal at a big salary just to come in and kind of do all that stuff for you, I think is awesome. And I agree with you, Chris. Like, I think Shea is one of the dudes who he's fine to be patient. I mean, he's obviously more than proven that, but there's only so long you can wait. I mean, this guy got MVP votes. Are you really going to say like, oh, this year's about Chet? It can't just be that, right? So you gotta thread that needle.
Yeah, and the thing with the Thunder is that I think we're just so used to saying that the Thunder are like not good. The Thunder are rebuilding. Sam Presti has 1 billion picks. He's never blah 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 blah. The Thunder were in the play-in last year. They won 40 games. They were a good basketball team built around a guy in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who is a stud, and then a guy in Jalen Williams who is going. His first act in the NBA was 14 points, 4 rebounds, 4.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists. So he is going to potentially get better. Josh Giddey probably going to get better. Lou Dort can continue to get better. All these guys can continue to get better, but they are coming from a floor of winning 40 basketball games, and you can throw a guy like Brook Lopez and a guy like Chet Holmgren in there, immediately upgrade your reinforce, whatever you want to say, your center position. And all of a sudden we're looking at a Thunder team that, let's say they get up to 44 wins, so a swing of 6 wins. That means they're in the playoffs without the play-in tournament last year. So there's an opportunity here for them to actually try and go for something like that future that everyone talks about with them. We're in it right now. So going for a guy like Brook Lopez, I really do like the idea of that, especially in that first year, as you know, you're kind of going to be holding Chet Holmgren's hand a little bit and helping him physically fill out, get used to the speed of the NBA, all that sort of thing. And then eventually you pass the baton and Chet becomes your starting center and, maybe after the All-Star break.
You know who the number 1 on-off guy for the Oklahoma City Thunder was last year?
If it's Poku, I'm gonna throw
It
my.
was not Poku.
Lindy Waters III.
He's second, actually.
Wiggins?
I feel like that might have been a joke, but he's second.
It was a joke.
Dario Saric.
Let's go.
And if
Trust
that
the
doesn't
process.
prove exactly what we're talking about here, then I don't know what does, right? They got a dude after the All-Star break who was 6'10", who could just be big, rebound, move the ball, shoot. And they were plus 13 per 100 possessions with him out there. Bring an even better version of that in, and you're cooking.
Him in Houston also would make sense to me. I do kind of wonder if you want to what that would do for Sengun, considering he's been in the league a couple years now, and it's do you want to take away his starting role? But I'm kind of a Sengun skeptic just from a defensive standpoint. There has to be growth there if he's ever going to be the maximum Sengun. And if they do truly want to accelerate, that would be an easy spot to say, hey, Brook Lopez, you and Dylan Brooks for all of our money, and maybe Van Vliet, and let's be an adult team this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like Van Vliet there. That was on my in case we didn't have enough to talk about list. I threw some extra ones together. I do like the Van Vliet to Houston fit. I just think he's a mature dude who can shoot and pass. Sign me up.
I suspect Ime Udoka might want that as well. So,
Yep.
any things that didn't make your guys' list? I have 2 that I couldn't. One, it was a Cavs one, and I didn't want to out myself. And secondly, I had a Suns one that I just couldn't quite get to because the Suns have no picks to do anything with.
I'll go last here. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
Cavs one, Jetty Osman, and some seconds for Royce O'Neal. I think could make sense for both teams. Osman's contract is about to be guaranteed, so it makes sense to do it soon if you could to save some money for Brooklyn. And if you get one of Donovan Mitchell's friends in town, maybe not a bad bit of business if you're Kobe Altman. I was trying to find a DeAndre Ayton for Gary Harris and Wendell Carter Jr. trade. No picks, and Wendell Carter Jr. is on such a great contract, and DeAndre Ayton is not on a great contract. So
He also might be better than DeAndre Ayton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it's a popular
tough.
one among Suns fans. So you're not out on an island.
I
literally
had Spot Track. I split my screen with Spot Track, and I was just trying to match salaries and needs with center. And brother, that was a tough exercise.
I mean, did you see the Ayton trade that Stein had this morning? It was
did I?
It was
JaVale, Tim Hardaway, and Rashawn Holmes.
And the Suns were who?
Yuck.
Was it the Suns were can't have JaVale in that?
Yeah. I don't know why. The fact that was the deal breaker is kind of hilarious. All right, my cutting room floor was the Kuzma one that I had, which was just to the Pacers, which we talked about. So, they drafted a lot of bigger wings though, so maybe they don't feel the need to do that. Maybe they'll play things patiently. We're talking about DeAndre Hunter. Kyle Kuzma's a similar player, a little more offense, a little less defense, but I'm interested to see Kuzma because he's another guy that kind of the rumors have gone away. Maybe he already has an agreement in place.
Bill, what's yours?
Well, so these aren't mine. I told our dear friend, colleague, spiritual advisor, brother in arms, Robbie Callum, that I was coming on to this podcast. And I told him make up a trade for each guy, Robbie, and I will blindside them with it. So first off, he decided to just do a Cavs and Suns trade, in which Jarrett Allen, Chetty Osman, and Ricky Rubio went to the Suns for DeAndre Ayton.
Oh boy!
He then decided to come up with a Suns trade where Terry Rozier and Nick Richards went to the Suns for DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix's quest to be the most hoopery team in the history of basketball. And then he did a Cavs trade where Jarrett Allen is traded for the Thunder for Lou Dort. Other than that, I got nothing.
like that.
Can I be honest with you?
Like that one.
Could talk me and Allen for Dort. Could talk me into it. Big Dort guy. Don't really know why, but I'm a Dort guy.
Speaking of hoopers,
Yes.
Yeah.
Lou Dort will
Cavs
take whatever shot you'd like him to take,
Look, I have like.
and ones you wouldn't.
Yes. I have a thing for guys who are like just clearly like lift weights and are strong, and Lou Dort is clearly like lifts weights and is strong. I have like a thing for basketball players that like clearly have spent time in the weight room. Like I'm begging for one summer to just like as an experiment, give me like Chet or Evan Mobley or Wemby, go to like lift at like a Big Ten college football program and just see what happens after like 3 months of creatine and just powerlifting. I just want to see what would happen and like see like just could it be bad? Yes. Would it be entertaining for me to see like Evan Mobley live in State College, Pennsylvania for 3 months? Also, yes, that would be good for me.
I will happily be Evan Mobley's tour guide throughout State College, Pennsylvania.
Just my thing is not Columbus, which is
sure, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I'm not as much as I like seeing you and seeing Boy Genius in Columbus. Not a Ohio State person.
Same.
Oh, who gives up? Who has to add more into an Allen Dort trade?
Into
Cleveland?
Allen.
Yes.
For Dort. Cleveland probably, just because they're over the barrel.
Just throw a second rounder in there. They're fine. Whatever.
And then
I really don't think. I think the Thunder are really going to try to never have a traditional five. I don't think it was just like an experiment or like joke this year. Like I think that's the goal. And so like the Mitchell Robinson, Jarrett Allen, I think the Thunder are totally chill. Like they're gonna just put 6'9" guys everywhere and then have Shea run everything, and that'll be their team. And I think they're gonna be awesome.
Would be fun.
God, DeAndre Ayton, the Cavs Suns trade also like has tickled my brain a little bit because
it shouldn't.
Because the other layer to that either this was intentional on your part or not is that means Dan Gilbert and Matt Ishbia would have to like agree to a trade involving each other's teams.
Yeah, not happening.
Oh, they are having their deputies work that one out.
Well, you have the
James Jones knows those guys.
James Jones, like I'm sure, like knows Kobe Altman and those guys. The other part of that is, I would bet that Dan Gilbert saw the Suns get Bradley Beal and is just like furious about it because he wants to do something himself. So maybe he could trade for Tobias Harris for Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, and we could bring it full circle.
That would certainly make a splash.
Oh my god! I will.
Full circle
I will.
moment.
I will.
That, Chris. You're a pro.
I'm not a pro. I would stop talking about basketball professionally if that trade like actually happened. I think I'd become just like a Browns guy, and just that'd be my pivot into the darkness. Well, in there, Bill. Thank you so much for coming on. People can read you at Dime. Follow you on. You have one of the few good Twitter accounts, I will say.
That's all I'm going for.
All right, Brendan, do we have anything else we need to plug before we get out of here?
No, our friends at Homage, hit the link down below, buy some shirts.
Yeah, Bill has an Homage.
NBA.
If you're watching on YouTube, Bill has an Homage NBA Jam shirt on right now.
NBA
Kevin
Jam
loves
stuff.
that's a good one. That's a good one. Any
Classic.
shirt with
Follow
JR.
or subscribe.
Yeah.
Wherever you listen or watch podcasts, and we'll be back
Friday.
Thursday leading into free agency, and hopefully we can make it another hour and a half where we don't have any deals go through. So we'll be Friday morning, Thursday night, whenever you listen. We'll catch you then.
He acted like we didn't get Declan Rice bids while we're doing this pod. Talk to y'all Friday.